One of those big bugbears in Jamaica is corruption and people's concern about corruption. And we've spent so many years thinking and talking about corruption in this country. Well, the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index for 2020 is out. Jamaica moved from a score of 43 out of 100 last year to 44. 0 is deemed very corrupt on the scale, and 100 means very, very clean. And Jamaica is now 69 out of 180 countries. Last year they placed us at 74th that's the 2019 ranking. So 74th in the 2019 ranking, and we are now at 69. So I spoke a little while ago with Justice Minister Delroy Chuck to get his reaction.
Well, I'm a little disappointed that the score is not better, because in previous years my great hope is that we could get to the pass mark of 50. So we have only moved up 1 point, even though we have improved from 74 to 69. So I don't know the basis on which they make these assessments, but I can assure you that an improvement is always, satisfying. But we hope that in future years our score can go up even better. Bear in mind, it's a perception. I would hope that actual corruption has not increased. In other words, would have decreased.
That issue of it being a perception, though, because I think one of the things that Transparency International has always said is that you can't really, because of the nature of corruption, it's not something you can measure, in terms of, how many bribes were given this year or that's how many, right. So that's why they use a perception index from people, a wide cross-section of people who are expected to know what is really happening in the country. Yes. So it sounds though, is it that you're not convinced that works?
Well, I don't know. I cannot tell you. What I can assure you is that Jamaicans generally see corruption where there's inefficiency, where there's lack of transparency, where they feel that a person has been deprived of a contract or it is given to someone else and they did not get it. They impute corruption. So that oftentimes corruption is labeled on a number of transactions which, when you investigate carefully, there may well have been no corruption and everything may well have been above board.
Listening there to Justice Minister Delroy Chuck. He was speaking to me a little while ago about the Corruption Perception Index, Jamaica's ranking on it. We're going to take the break, do a little bit of business. We'll continue that interview when we come back. Remember our WhatsApp line, 553-5908. My producer came in with a marker. Take pity for me and laugh after she done laugh. 553-5908, 553-5908. Ricardo in Glengoff saying hi. Hi, Ricardo. Thank you so much for listening. Let's go to the break. We'll soon come. Thank you so much for staying with us here, listening to Beyond the Headlines on Radio Jamaica. All right, and out of there, man. Boy. So having told you all that I now have WhatsApp, yes, Beyond the Headlines get WhatsApp, 553-5908, the Radio Jamaica WhatsApp. So Adam says, BTH now have WhatsApp, relief has come, yippee, for all who trying to call and can't get through, joy cometh in the morning, or the afternoon, Adam, or the afternoon. All right, so we are playing for you an interview I did a short while ago with the Justice Minister Delroy Chuck, who said he was disappointed with the fact that Jamaica hadn't done better in the Corruption Perception Index, moving up from 43 to 44. And I was going through for him the pluses and the minuses as had been identified by NIA head, Professor Trevor Monroe. So I'd gone through the pluses and he's reacting to that.
So, one has to be very careful in assessing a perception index. Obviously, if generally the citizens at large have a perception of corruption, is not a good thing. So it's better for them not to have that perception.
All right, let me just run through, if I could, for you, just quickly, what Trevor Monroe of National Integrity Action has flagged as what he says are the pluses and the minuses. He says pluses are relatively transparent administration of the COVID-19 relief package, despite some concerns raised by the Auditor General, reaffirmation of the independence of the judiciary in terms of that that would be the SOE case, trial and conviction in the Manchester Municipal Corporation case, resignation of the Mayor of St. Anne. He also raises the, the consensus agreement between the PM, leader of the opposition, and civil society in relation to crime and violence, free and fair general elections, as well as integrity commission for training for cabinet members. Now, among the minuses, well, first of all, let me ask you if you would comment on the pluses he identifies.
Well, there's no doubt that there are many more pluses. He has identified some of them. Certainly, the investment that the government has put into the Integrity Commission is a major plus, because we have provided them with large sums of money over the last 3 years, and we intend to strengthen them even more, because we feel that the Integrity Commission is one which we will be relying on to ensure that it identifies, it exposes, and it ensures that persons who engage in corruption are properly charged and hopefully convicted.
Okay, the minuses he mentions now. Significant irregularities in award and supervision of road contracts as identified by the performance audit done by the Auditor General. Also inordinate delay in passing legislation to strengthen the anti-corruption framework. Chronic breaches, reducing transparency and accountability in relation to reporting requirements mandated by law by scores of public-funded public bodies and agencies, he raises the issue of being current with annual reports. He raises also the issue of the parliamentary committees and the diminution of the role of the opposition in chairing those committees. Disclosure in the annual report of the Auditor General of problems at the Ministry of Labour and Social Security in particular. Repeated delays in commencement of the trial of the, in relation to the CMU concerns, corruption charges. No disclosure of any prosecution arising from the Integrity Commission's investigations into Petrojam.
Well, it's difficult to comment on many of these because, as you will appreciate, quite a number of those are actually on the investigation and also being pursued, so that one cannot comment as to why there are no charges.
So you're listening there to Delroy Chuck, and let's take the rest of that interview if we could.
When you take, for instance, the question of contracts, as a MP and a minister, I can tell you that the process goes through so much bureaucracy that the perception of corruption must exist. Even though it is the right decisions may have been made, it takes you 2 before a contract goes through the procurement process and finally awarded. And then persons who expect to get the contract may well not have got it because, they have competed, did not get it. I think, some of the negatives that have been identified by Trevor are not necessarily negatives. When you take, for instance, who should chair the committee.
Why did I know you were going there?
Because the problem is that until we change the standing committee or the provisions of the standing order committee, what has happened is that we are just stuck by that position. So, discussion should take place in terms of whether those standing orders should be changed.
But you make it sound as if there's that at least is one change that is entirely within the ambit of the parliament and that you could do in a very short period of time. So the argument that, oh, we're doing it because the standing orders, this is what the standing orders provides for, you all could change the standing orders.
Well, the position is that what we have found during the last parliament is that those committees that were being chaired, none really worked. And that is why the position of the Prime Minister, he wants these committees to work. And if you are going to depend on the opposition members, the chairman, to call a meeting, then they may never function. And that is why we decided, the Prime Minister decided, and the leader of the government business, to have these committees work, you need someone who will be proactive. But that we have gone through that debate before, and I'm sure further discussions will take place. Okay? Now, I just want to emphasize, because we're dealing with this perception index, you will know that on Tuesday, we designated the Integrity Commission as the designated authority under the Protected Disclosures Act. And one of the things I wanted to say, Dionne, is that this Whistleblower Act, as it is known, has not been well utilized by employees in state agencies.
And when you look at it, though, because when I read the act, I could understand why. When you look at the steps that someone has to go through, one can understand why they're not using it.
Well, let me just respond quickly by saying that I intimated that later this year we will set up another joint select committee to examine this act. So if there are challenges, too many burdens, then we can change the provision so that persons can easily, expose corruption within any government agency. The truth of the matter is that I have not really seen or heard of many, if any, expose under this particular Whistleblower Act.
I haven't heard of any.
Right. So, the Integrity Commission, and why we're going to provide them with additional resources, we expect them to really sensitize the country and employees as to wherever corruption is, to expose it. So that I know the Integrity Commission will be on a very important educational and informational venture to educate the public at large as to where corruption may occur and how they can expose it. So one would hope that starting this year, hopefully, when we look at the Protected Disclosure Act, because the Integrity Commission, without, complaints or information, can't really act. But so when we look at this Protected Disclosure Act,
which is the other name for the correct name for the Whistleblower Act.
Exactly. One would hope that we can so change it to make it, as you say, less burdensome for employees, but also for the Integrity Commission to provide a confidential process where persons can give information. Because, as you know, we have a sort of vicious informer for dead culture. And so persons don't really want to speak up when they should. But so you need a better process where they can identify confidential means to bring information to the proper authorities.
Well, all right. We're going to leave it there because I want to hear from Trevor Monroe from National Integrity Action when we come back. So stay tuned. Remember our WhatsApp. Oh, I just like to say that. Our WhatsApp number 553-5908, 553-5908. Please don't call. Nobody now got answer. Don't send me voice note. Nobody now got answer. Don't try to video call. Nobody now got answer. It's just a line for messages, text, okay? And as well, just give me your first name and your general location. Soon come. All right, thank you so much for staying with us. So one listener says, I'm so excited now the little man with little credit can get in the proverbial game. And Richard in Lawrence Tavern says, thanks. We now have a new method of communicating with you. That's our WhatsApp line, 553-5908, 553-5908. I say as I sit here watching people recording audio messages that I just told you nobody is going to listen to. And then easy, Anyway. All right. So we have with us, we're continuing to talk about the Corruption Perception Index. And let me share two comments as I welcome Principal Director of National Integrity Action, Professor Trevor Monroe, because one handle says, Mr. Chuck is not a rookie. Why is he surprised by the index? Corruption is defined as dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in power, typically involving bribery. No matter which party is in power, these activities have been prevalent from time immemorial. And then I have another, where's that other listener I'd wanted to share? Here we go, who says, Kenny in Portmore, a lot of corrupt practices are unintentional. For instance, a lot of people who pay to obtain a driver's license don't believe they can get it legitimately. Professor Monroe, always appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me, Dionne, and good afternoon to all your listeners.
Always appreciate it. Your comment on what Kenny said, first of all, before we go to the index?
That's relating to,
a lot of people he says a lot of corrupt practices are unintentional. For instance, a lot of people who pay for their driver's license don't believe they can get it legitimately.
Yes, and I do agree with that. It's unfortunate, it's unacceptable, but it does happen. And we should note, by the way, that those which are sometimes called petty corruption, I'm not sure I agree with that designation, we in Jamaica are far less guilty of that form of corruption than in so many other countries. In fact, the most recent report that I have seen shows that we, Jamaica, were the most improved on what they call bribery victimization. That is to say, people who are either paid or willing to pay a bribe than all the other countries in the hemisphere which were investigated. So we do have that difficulty, but believe you me, that is not what is responsible for billions and billions of dollars being lost to the public purse that could go to do so much in alleviating people's suffering under this pandemic and under the economic crisis. But it does need to be pointed out, and it should be diminished even further.
All right. Now, you say, you perhaps heard my interview there with Mr. Chuck. He was saying he was disappointed we haven't done more. He thinks, in fact, perhaps we are doing better than the index suggests. And I noted with interest the Foreign Affairs Secretary, Senator Johnson Smith, who seems to be celebrating it, saying we're moving in the right direction, although we have work to do. She said our score improved by 1 and our ranking improved from 74 out of 100 to 69. You, though, are also saying, you're saying we have a whole heap of work to do, that we're not doing well enough while we're still below 50 out of 100.
I mean, I agree with Delroy. I'm disappointed, but disappointed is not strong enough. Our resolve should be strengthened to move Jamaica where it belongs. That is to say, at the top of the league in terms of integrity. After all, we are near the top of the world in terms of our freedom of the press. We are near the top of the world in terms of our administration of elections. We don't belong, given the talent of our people, to the bottom half of perception of corruption. So, pass mark is 50. If I were still wearing my professorial cap, and my students were getting 44 and then improved 45 and then dropped to 43 and then get to 39, that is a moment of great distress, and we'd have to sit together and say, look, how are we going to get you over the pass mark, particularly because there are so many more opportunities if you could get a better performance. We really don't belong here, and I beg to disagree respectfully with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. There's nothing to celebrate here. We've been in this failure mode for too long, and now is the time, with the crises that are on us, with the people having so many difficulties in making two ends meet, for us to really resolve, look, the chronic difficulties that have kept us here for so many decades is not what we are going to allow to continue. And I've tried to point out some of those, which I believe with the appropriate resolve and the appropriate action and advocacy by the man in the street and by various organizations and leaders, we can and shall do better.
Do you think the will is there, though?
Do I think?
The will is there.
It comes and goes. That's how I see it. And usually, when it comes, it's because of great concern expressed by large numbers of Jamaicans, either in positions of influence or at the grassroots level. I give you a couple examples. When the government proposed to sequester cabinet documents from 20 to 70 years, the immediate outcry, not just from the PAJ and NIA, but from ordinary people, was such that within 2 or 3 days, they resolved to do the right thing and abandon that proposal. So I believe if there was more systematic assertion by the public, it would make political will a little bit more consistent than it has been and that it is now.
So Chuck was saying that he wants to look at whether the Whistleblowers Act needs reform. Do you think it does? I know you were one of the people who really pushed hard for it.
It does. It does need reform. We're glad we have a Whistleblower Act, but it's entirely inadequate. In fact, just a couple of years ago, the peer review of Jamaica's compliance with the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption, which asks for countries to pass whistleblower legislation, concluded that there needs to be a strengthening. And one of the things that they proposed was that there should be a provision that persons who felt themselves at risk should have automatic protection under the Witness Protection Act in the context of disclosure. But more importantly than that is the recent experience we had at the Cultural Development Commission, which I hope the Minister would have remembered and commented on, where the persons in that commission who saw wrong and who spoke out were being threatened under what? The Official Secrets Act of 1911. This is a good example of what I mean by us needing to consistently maintain our advocacy to get the legislators to do what they say they will do and not just a promise and we forget it. The Joint Select Committee of 2011, which I know you recall, recommended that the Official Secrets Act, which is used even in December 2020 as a tool of intimidating public servants from talking out, from saying the wrongs which they see, was recommended to be repealed. We are now in 2021. It's a good time for that to be acted on as part of the process of encouraging the people to utilize the Protected Disclosures Act. And I do accept and appreciate that the Integrity Commission is now going to do an educational program around that act because it's one of Jamaica's best kept secrets. Nobody knows it exists. And even if you know it exists and you try to use it, you're subject to intimidation of the kind that was reported in relation to the Cultural Development Commission. So yes, we need to reform that act and we need to do it quickly.
Okay, I was asking, you mentioned the Official Secrets Act, and I was asking Mr. Chuck, in fact, about the fact that a Joint Select Committee is supposed to be reviewing the Official Secrets Act as well as the Access to Information Act and the Archives Act, and he was saying there's so many Joint Select Committees sitting right now, they're trying to have some of them wind up before they set up any more. But for
Agreed. But what would help us when you have limited resources, you need to prioritize. And I can think of no greater priority in Jamaica now to make more funds available, public funds available to help the schools, the health services, the security forces who are all reeling under the pressure of COVID and associated issues, is to deal with all matters that can reduce the likelihood of the wastage or corrupt theft of public funds. And to that extent, we need to deal with a prioritizing of the act. Under the Golding administration, he did something I believe it could well be followed by subsequent administrations. If you look at the legislation agenda, which is on the Cabinet Secretary's website and is open to the public, you will see that each year there are 60, 70 or 80 different bills at the various stages. And so they all crowd out each other. Joint Select Committees are set up. But what Golding did was prioritize those which were designated Prime Minister's priority. What that allowed the public to assess is, given all these 60 different things, are these priorities of the Prime Minister consistent with the priorities, needs of the public? And if they are not, to speak out. If they are, to comment. We don't know what are the priorities of the administration. If you look at the Cabinet Secretary's website, you see 60 different laws, and they're all of equal importance, one would assume, because none are designated a priority.
Going to have to leave it there. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Prof. I'm right up onto news, but I get the point there in terms of what are the priorities, and we'll see. Sounds like a question we can follow up on. We always appreciate your time and your thoughts. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me, and have a good evening.
Same to you, Professor Trevor Monroe of National Integrity Action.